Okay, let's unpack this. It's a bit of a head scratcher, isn't it?
Definitely.
You hear all this talk, all these surveys saying people are worried, feeling the pinch economically.
Right. The sentiment seems pretty negative in places.
But then you look at what people are actually doing with their money, and, well, it doesn't always match up.
Exactly. What if that gut feeling, that economic intuition we have, isn't really the full story?
That's the puzzle, right? And that's what we want to dig into today.
It's like the feeling versus the reality of the transactions.
Precisely. And our jumping off point is some really interesting commentary from Michael Miebach. He's the CEO of MasterCard.
Yes. He spoke recently about what they're seeing in terms of actual real-time consumer spending.
We're looking at his remarks from the Semaphore World Economy Summit. That was Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. PYM NTS reported on it.
So getting insights straight from a major player in that global payment network, that's valuable data.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive for you listening is to try and cut through some of that noise.
Get a clearer picture of consumer spending based on MasterCard's hard data.
Exactly. And also touch on how MasterCard itself is navigating things, maybe what they're looking at for the future.
Moving beyond just the general feeling and looking at the evidence, the strategy. Makes sense.
Okay, so let's tackle that big contradiction first, the spending disconnect. Miebach was pretty direct. He said MasterCard is not seeing a slowdown in consumer spending.
Right. He didn't mince words, and he backed it up with numbers from their own economics institute.
What were those figures again?
They reported a 1.4% increase in overall consumer spending for March. That's, actual activity flowing through their system.
Which is pretty striking when you put it next to those surveys showing widespread economic worry.
It really is. Feels like two different narratives running side by side.
So how did Miebach explain this? Why are people spending if they say they're worried?
Well, his take was interesting. He talked about the empowered consumer. The idea is that people are making very deliberate choices.
Empowered, meaning?
Meaning, even if they're being maybe more selective or adjusting how much they spend on certain things, they're still prioritizing what they really want to do.
Okay, like maybe cutting back day to day, but still booking that trip.
Exactly. That was the kind of example he gave. Someone still really wants that vacation, that experience, so they find ways to make it happen, even if it means less spending elsewhere.
So it's more about shifting priorities rather than just stopping spending altogether.
That seems to be the idea. It's like, okay, I can't do everything, but this is important to me.
And Miebach was quite firm on this observation based on their data.
Oh, very. He flat out said, quote, "We don't see any change at this point."
Wow. That's a strong statement from someone with that kind of overview.
It really is. It carries weight. But, okay, it also begs the question, what if things do take a turn? How ready is a company like MasterCard for potential slowdown?
Good question. And Miebach seemed pretty confident there, too. He pointed to how diversified they are.
Across different services and geographies, right?
Yeah, operating in, over 200 countries and territories? That gives them a natural cushion against problems in just one region.
That global footprint is definitely a strength. But he also stressed diversification beyond just payment processing.
Right, because we mostly think of the card itself, but he highlighted other areas like cybersecurity, which aren't directly tied to how much people are swiping their cards day to day.
Yeah, and that's maybe a less obvious part of their business for many people. He framed them as a major global cybersecurity provider.
So they're not just moving money, they're also protecting the systems that move the money.
Exactly. And that's a service that remains valuable, even if overall consumer spending dips. It adds resilience.
It really shows the different layers of their business. So putting that all together, Miebach sounds, wow, pretty optimistic, doesn't he?
He does. He explicitly said, "Our scenario planning isn't one of dark clouds."
Dark cloud.
Pretty positive framing. He added that right now they don't see a scenario that would cause a dramatic impact on their business.
Okay. That level of confidence is definitely something to note.
For sure.
Now, let's switch gears a bit. There was that rumor flying around recently.
The Apple Pay one.
Yeah, about Apple Pay potentially moving its processing from MasterCard over to Visa. That got some attention.
It did. These big tech and payment network partnerships are always under the microscope. So naturally, Miebach was asked about it.
And his response?
About as blunt as you can get, he just said, it's not happening.
No beating around the bush there.
Nope. He acknowledged the reports, but was unequivocal. Apple isn't looking to switch from MasterCard for Apple Pay processing.
It's interesting context, though, right? There were reports that Visa had offered Apple something like $100 million.
Yes, supposedly to try and win that Apple credit card business. It just shows how fierce the competition is.
Between the networks, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, but also the banks like JP Morgan Chase or Synchrony wanting those big co-brand deals.
Absolutely. That Apple Card portfolio is a big prize. The whole situation highlights the high stakes involved in these strategic relationships.
So thinking about all the ways we can pay now, cash, cards, stable coins, crypto popping up, it's a crowded field. How does MasterCard see its place in all that?
Mibach gave a really useful way to think about it. He suggested seeing MasterCard less like a direct consumer brand and more like the essential plumbing, the infrastructure, kind of behind the scenes.
Okay, like the engine making things work.
Pretty much. He used Sony and Walmart as examples. He said, we power the Sonys and Walmarts with our solutions on the backside.
That helps picture it, enabling other companies' payment systems.
Right, so they see themselves as driving a huge chunk of global commerce. And interestingly, he said they actually love the competition from all these new options because it gives consumers choices.
That's a confident stance, focusing on their core role as the enabler rather than fighting every new trend directly.
Seems like it. And a big focus for them, he said, is making the actual customer experience better. Specifically, checkout.
The checkout process. Always room for improvement there, whether it's online or in a store.
Definitely a common pain point. And MasterCard sees biometrics as a key part of fixing that.
Right, using your fingerprint or face instead of typing things in. He pointed out MasterCard actually created the standard for that.
Yeah, the standard for biometric authentication. It's the tech enabling a lot of what we're starting to see.
And they have a pretty bold goal for the near future, don't they, by 2030?
That's right. By 2030, the aim is to pretty much eliminate the need for entering card numbers, static passwords, even those one-time codes for online buying.
That would certainly be smoother. So how do they get there?
It's a combination, really. Tokenization is a big part.
Remind us what tokenization is again.
Think of it like a secure, temporary substitute for your actual card number. Your real details aren't shared during the transaction, making it safer.
Got it. So tokenization plus?
Plus biometric authentication, using your fingerprint, your face, to prove it's really you making the purchase.
Okay, smoother and safer. That makes sense.
That's the goal. Now, another big area Mibach talked about was AI, artificial intelligence.
Which apparently they've been using for a while already.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned they already use machine learning and rules-based AI to process, get this, 160 billion transactions.
160 billion. So AI is already fundamental to their operations.
Absolutely. But the new focus, the exciting part for them, seems to be generative AI.
Okay, the tech behind things like ChatGPT, and he used this phrase, agentic commerce. Sounds futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? The core idea is creating smart AI agents, like little digital assistants that really understand your preferences and can handle complex tasks for you.
Like what kind of tasks?
His example was travel planning. Imagine an AI agent that knows all your reward points, balances across different cards and programs, knows your travel history, your preferences.
And it could just book the whole trip.
Potentially, yes. Gather the points, find flights and hotels you'd like, handle the booking. He described it as a smart agent that knows all your preferences, all of your card balances.
Like a personal financial concierge powered by AI.
That's a good way to put it. Leveraging all that data, they managed to simplify things for the consumer.
Where does AI have the biggest financial impact for MasterCard right now, though?
He specifically highlighted cybersecurity and fraud management, which makes total sense given the volume of transactions they handle.
Protecting the network.
Exactly. And he mentioned they've invested heavily in security, $11 billion since 2018.
$11 billion. Wow. It's a serious commitment.
It is. And their goal for fraud prevention using AI is massive. By 2030, they aim to save something like $120 billion in prevented fraud.
How does generative AI help with that specifically?
Well, think about its ability to analyze vast amounts of data and spot patterns. He mentioned using Gen AI to scan the dark web for stolen card data.
Proactively hunting for compromised information.
Right, and then alerting banks in real time. Also analyzing, apparently, 1 trillion data points to spot anomalies that might indicate fraud. Gen AI can model complex, subtle patterns that older AI might miss.
1 trillion data points. The scale is just immense.
It really is.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways seem to be, despite all the negative economic sentiment you hear about,
MasterCard's data, Mibach says, shows people are still spending. Maybe differently, but spending.
right. And the company itself feels resilient thanks to diversification, especially into things like cybersecurity,
And they're heavily investing in the future of payments biometrics, getting rid of card numbers online.
making checkout smoother and safer. Plus, leaning hard into AI, both the established kind and new generative AI, particularly for security and fraud prevention.
And that Apple Pay rumor, officially squashed by the CEO.
Not happening. So it really highlights how important it is to look beyond just the headlines or sentiment surveys, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You need multiple data points, the sentiment, the hard transaction data, the company strategies to get a fuller picture. And you see how fast payment tech is still evolving.
Definitely. So here's a final thought maybe for you listening to chew on. If that hard spending data really does clash with the widespread economic anxiety,
Right.
what's driving those anxious feelings? Are there deeper psychological things going on or societal factors?
That's a fascinating question. And how will these new technologies, the AI agents, the seamless biometric checkouts, change not just how we spend, but maybe our whole relationship with money and the economy itself in the coming years?
Yeah, how does instant frictionless spending potentially reshape our economic behavior? Lots to think about there.